So yes, my name is David Fisher. I'm currently working for the company Applause. We specialize in app quality. So today I think it would be good to go ahead and talk about quality products, what that means, and kind of focus on the creative experience. As a designer, I feel like I'm outnumbered here, which is pretty typical for my career. I'm very used to working with large groups of engineers and developers. So bear with me, of course, as I come across from the creative spectrum of this world. So I'm going to tell a story. Stories are very important, particularly when you're trying to communicate, create a dialogue. You can tell where you're coming from, where the person's going, and you can start connecting. Character building is extremely important when you're telling a story. You can feel communication, and when you get connected to them, you could identify with them. You can learn from them, perhaps, or you might dislike. Up to the viewer, of course. So again, myself, I'm David Fisher. I am a product designer. I've been working in design for many years now. I actually started as an illustrator. My entire life I've been illustrating, and I come to the pencil as the most powerful weapon in my arsenal of creative tools. It is the most low-budget device that you can do many things with. It will do your homework, it will calculate problems for you, it will solve unique experiences. It's very lightweight, very low budget, and this is a little foreshadowing for later. I pursued a degree in multimedia design, particularly in print. So print still exists, surprisingly. You can see here. There we go. Depending on what kind of print you're doing, obviously there's spot printing, very large, complex machines that require a lot of attention. This isn't a device that you can push to production and then realize you made a mistake and reset your master and push to an area without having to worry about large amounts of money being spent with your mistakes, of course. So this is another world. I won't get too heavily into this, of course, but this is just where I came from. Of course, when I graduated college and after I got my degree, I was walking around Boston area with this large leather portfolio with all of my work in it. It became very obvious that it was quite distracting for me to have this thing. It was very heavy, it was obtrusive, and complicated to set it up in front of someone when you're describing yourself and trying to produce a more connected experience. So of course I realized immediately that I needed someplace else to be putting my work. The internet, of course, of all things, is the solution to many. But with a degree in print, I did not know or understand how to do that. So I, of course, take advantage of Google and taught myself a few languages that were required to do so. I'm sure we're all familiar with HTML, CSS, very core principles, kind of 101 to understand how to create a dialogue with the internet. My first career out of school was with a company called Chadwick's of Boston. It was a female fashion agency that specialized in e-commerce. So my day-to-day activities were basically working with the Adobe Creative Suite, manipulating photographs, editing images, and producing typographical marketing experiences for the end user. Again, I used front-end HTML, CSS. I worked with a small group of developers using JavaScript and a content management system to help push. After that, my experience led me to a small contract working with the government. The name Beacon Interactive Systems. There were about 15 to 20 developers. They specialized in .NET. They were using Lotus. It still exists too, yes. Basically convinced them to start using Ruby on Rails. And of course, we were always also using front-end HTML, CSS, pushing elements to production. My career then led me to Crashlytics. If you're not familiar with them, they specialize in crash reporting software. I started working with them when there were about 25 developers, engineers, focusing on Go, Clojure, Java, Ruby on Rails, to name a few, of course, which then, of course, led to the acquisition of Twitter, which expanded the engineering force by a couple hundred, I'll say, maybe a few thousand. The reason I'm describing this, of course, why is this all relevant? That brings me to the fact that I've been a single designer working with large teams of engineers my entire career. So I have an understanding of how to facilitate a relationship when you're talking with people who produce code. as a creative person, working with developers, I realized there is a harmony, of course. You're very logical, you're very centric, and in fact, focused on the other end of the mind, of course. So, as a designer, what is design? And I have a question for the audience. You're welcome to participate if someone would like to help us explain, just out of curiosity, what is design? Do I have anyone willing to throw themselves under the bus? As expected, that's fine. Well, let's rewind here a little bit. Let's ask Apple Dictionary, what is design? Well, design is a plan or drawing produced to show the look and function of workings. Okay? Webster's Dictionary tells me it's, quote, to plan and make decisions about something that is being built or created. Fair enough. And again, Wolfram Alpha tells us it is the act of working out the form of something as by making a sketch or outline or plan. Now, what does this all mean? Well, I'm not trying to argue semantics here, and I'm sure depending on who you're asking, you'll get a different answer. But I think what I'm trying to acquire here is that the core of the word design has nothing to do with pretty pictures, colors, art, or aesthetic motif. It is, in essence, planning, process. It is the foundation of this word here. And this is another character in our story, of course, as we begin to dive into this. And how is this analogous to design? Excuse me, how is engineering analogous to design? Well, I'll back up again here real quickly. And again, I'm not arguing semantics, but we'll just ask some people. An engineer is a person who designs. Okay. Well, now we've realized that we've established a relationship here from what a designer is and what an engineer is, and the root of these words, the etymology, of course. A person who has scientific training, who designs and builds complicated products, etc. That's excellent. Now that we've established a foundation of where this is going here, we can begin to understand what are things that we can design. Well, I think we're all pretty familiar with applications, products that humans interact with on the digital level. You can design everything. You can design clothes, fashion, trends. You can design digital experiences, analog experiences with device, combining fashion. You can design buildings. You can design roads. You can design cities, cultures, landscapes, carve rock. But essentially, what you're designing is an experience for a human. And that's pretty much the core of this talk here that I'm trying to get to here. These are humans that are interacting with these products that we're building, essentially. Of course, there's other applications that might be interfacing with other animals, but essentially, a majority of what we do is create products for humans. What is a trustworthy product? What is an experience that we can gather a relationship with from our product to the end user? Well, it has to be trustworthy. And how do you build trust? You create excitement and delight. You tell the user that you're here for them, the person that's experiencing or working with your product. This is a moment, an experience that they can become connected to you. How can you touch someone without physically touching them? That's a good question, because when you're trying to build trust and relationships with human beings, trust and the physical engagement is very important. You connect with them. So how can you connect with someone physically without physically connecting with them? You have to be impactful. You have to gather their attention. You have to be emotionally connected. Create an experience that's unique, that's interesting to them, that they can relate with, that they can identify to. You can touch them in their minds, in their hearts, by building trust. Connectivity through a digital experience is very difficult, but it can be acquired. And not necessarily a digital one, but anything that a human can interact with, of course. So what are some quality products that I feel have achieved such a connection to the end user? Well, we'll back up a little bit. We'll be a little extreme, and we'll take the Bugatti, for example. So when we talk quality, I think this thing kind of has it very lined up, and it's very analogous to engineering, design, building software and products. It's a very attractive machine. It's beautiful, it's mysterious, it's sexy, it's quality, hand-stitched leather steering wheels, custom to the user's advice, hand-stitched leather interiors with custom interfaces and custom colors. Anytime you purchase one of these vehicles, you're paying a lot of money, so it's up to you to decide how you want to experience this product on many levels. Again, you're paying very, very much attention to detail. High-tech, low-budget bucket seats that kind of hug you as you sit in it. You are essentially within the womb of this vehicle. You are cradled in this device. It feels very connected. You are comfortable. You are trusted. This thing has your life in its hands. And this is the analogy here, of course, is the beauty of the machine is all in the engineering of the product. So there's now an excellent relationship that we've understood here between this machine, between design and engineering. It is a beautiful, beautiful machine. So we can rewind a little bit or fast forward, however you want to put it, and we could start getting a little more centric on what we're doing here. We're coders, we're programmers, we're designers, we're project owners, perhaps more or less engineers. Uber did something very interesting, whether you like their services or not. I think it's good to use them as a way to express how you can connect humans to an experience. If you're not familiar, you can access a limousine driver. A very eloquent, elegant experience. This person is trained in the art of quality. He wants to assure himself and you that you've experienced a quality relationship with him. Otherwise, he is out of a job. We'll get into that, of course, in a second. But we've put a device in your hands that you can now access any driver, anytime. Excuse me, not any driver, of course, but a driver anytime. He can come to you to your front door. He doesn't know where you are, but you know where he is. You know when he's turning. You know when he's turning around. You know his exact, or I'll say approximate location. This is pretty trustworthy. You're a pretty satisfied customer if you're at least aware of where this is going, where it's going to be. Again, we put this in your hand. You have access to this any time of day or night. Before you purchase or ask for this vehicle to show up, you can see how many are, where they are in the city. Now, this is where it gets really interesting because they've actually done that for the driver as well. You rate your driver on a 5-star experience from 1 to 5, of course, related to the quality of your experience. If your driver doesn't show up or he's late or he gives you flack or he's not connected with you in a way that you would hope is a quality experience, you can give him a low rating. And he also does the same for you. So this actually instigates and motivates quality-driven. That's a trustworthy relationship. And again, the interface, the one that connects them all. It's very delicate. It's very simple. It's communicative. It's easy. And for the driver as well, they have the opportunity to access information just as the user. There's some team-focused companies, and of course, again, this might not be exactly correct, but we'll go ahead and break it down like this. We have an engineering-focused company, such as Google, heavy engineering-focused culture. Engineers outnumber anyone in that organization. They're mostly focused on function. There's Apple, of course, who's focused on the beauty of their design. Of course, function is a necessity, but more or less, they're focused on the attraction of their product, the quality of the appeal. Companies like Salesforce and a few others perhaps focus more on sales. We're a sales-driven company. We want to get in the front door. We want to make connections, contacts, get you to purchase our product. And I personally feel like Windows is perhaps more marketing-focused. They're going to try to get the world to know who they are, whether they use your product or not, in your face all the time. And of course, this is the love story again, analogous to the engineer and the designer being connected. Let's talk about a mobile experience, for example. There's a lot of things involved in what a mobile experience is. There's the hardware, the device, the operating system, perhaps the potential browser that the user will be interacting with. There's a lot of complex variables involved in this. This isn't a one-man job. You need a designer and an engineer to understand how to facilitate such an experience. So I said I'm a product designer, and I'd like to at least express what I feel that means and how it's relevant to software. I feel like if you could call yourself or you are connected to a, quote, product, there's a lot involved. There's user experience, there's the user interface, there's the interactive design, there's the front-end implementation of the interface that your designers have built for you, and of course, logic, programmatical coding that needs to happen, and systems operations. And if we break that down, well, what is the user experience? I think there's a mistake in the community when I say UX. I was approached lately by someone in the community looking for an experienced UX designer. And they needed that person to know JavaScript, HTML. They called it front end, but the title was UX. Again, I'm not here to argue semantics, but I feel like it's acceptable to understand that the user experience, in essence, has nothing to do with code. It has to do with how the user experiences your product through the interactions, what's on the page, the screens that he sees, how he gets there, where he's going, why did he get here. It is the path in which a user sees information. In the user interface, these are separate skill sets, separate entities of what one can be doing. Buttons, text, type, boxes, and text is really what it all comes down to. The appeal, the motif, the attraction of the interface. That is a visual designer. There is, of course, interaction design. How do we interact with this at the animative level? How does a button react when I press it? How does a screen slide across the page when I'm accessing information? Of course, the code. There's plenty of different languages that we can acquire this experience from. And then the systems operations, which I'm not as familiar with, of course, but it exists, and it's part of this process. So this has set the stage, of course, to the kind of apex of this conversation is how can we achieve such of a quality experience? Well, we've realized that we have to connect ourselves to the user. We have to create a trustworthy relationship for them. We have to keep them excited and delighted. So I'm going to explain several different approaches that I've learned in my past, in my experiences, that I feel have the highest impact value. They're the most low-budget approach, they're energy conservant, and they allow the team to interact with each other. I think collaboration is extremely important with your teams. Designers and engineers, you must talk, you must speak, you must bring yourself together to create these ideas and solve these problems, because we all have different minds that react in different ways and solve problems differently. It would be good to come together and harmonize that knowledge and acquire a relationship with the product. So I'll rewind here. So this is the first. You go from a whiteboard to, I say Photoshop, but I mean any visual product that you can acquire an interface from that you don't have to actually programmatically build. It's a static image. To implementation. Now what does that mean? Everybody who's involved in the project gets into a room. The stakeholders, of course. I'm considering this the designers and the people who will be building it. The engineers, the developers. Be creative, talk, think out loud. You're trying to solve problems, solve them in this manner. Think before you leap is essentially the concept here. This is this most low budget way you can possibly start doing this, is with a pen, a pencil, perhaps on paper. It's very easy, very low budget, lightweight, and it gets thoughts and ideas out in the world very quickly. Kind of a one-on-one thing. And of course, again, I described that now that you've acquired this kind of concept, once you come to a solution, you can then take that information and bring it directly into a world that allows you to see what it looks like, how it feels. This is what a designer or someone who is visually motivated can do for you. As you produce your team or put together this crew that you have, you can essentially, you want someone to do this for you. So once you've put a bunch of boxes and arrows and circles and text on a whiteboard, you want someone to produce something like this for you. This might take time, but if you have a designer who's, a visual designer who's focused, he's creative, he enjoys what he's doing, he can take something like I just showed you earlier, very low level, low budget, whiteboard document and produce a concept. What does it look like on the shelf? This is what the product will look like, it'll feel like. The next question is, of course, now that we have that, how do we get it on the computer? Well, you need the engineers to help drive that, obviously. I say, how do you get it on the glass? A whole team is required to achieve such a concept. The second one I'm going to explain is a little more involved. It's a little more timely, but I think you get more return on your investment when you're creating this experience. First, obviously, you want to research. You want to figure out who is going to be using this. You're going to want to be talking to those people who will be using it. Create some low-budget wireframes. You want to iterate with your user. Start to make working models. This is an evolutionary process. Research. This is the most important one. Again, think about what you're doing before you do it. Essentially, when you're researching the competition, there's a large advantage to have competition. Someone else has already solved these problems for you, so now you can go figure out from all their mistakes and use them to your advantage. It keeps you on your toes to have competition. The Uber analogy was perfect. If taxi cabs had competition, they probably would have, well, at least in the States, I'm sorry, I don't know how they work out here, would have stepped it up a little bit. Who's your target audience? Who will be using this application? Is it a CEO of a company? Is it a 6-year-old playing a game? Probably be good to know. These are the very fundamental questions that you're trying to ask the user, that you want to extract information from them. You do not want to ask, do you like the blue face with the red buttons? Does that work for you? Well, you've now primed them. You've now given them information that their mind is going to start running with. They're not going to give you an answer that's valuable. So you ask them, what do you do? What is painful for you? What do you love to do? And what do you wish to have? What is their background and role? What are previous places that they've been? Maybe you can learn from their interactions with other products. What their responsibilities are. What tasks do they perform? What are they in charge of? And how many people do they engage with? Potentially they report to people. Who do you report to? Who do you interact with on a daily basis? These questions are direct, of course. You can iterate on these depending on your target audience. Maybe they don't work at a company. Maybe they're not involved with these kinds of technical relationships that I'm describing. This is kind of an example of what you would ask people who are in large organizations, potentially software. There are several tools you can use, again, to acquire this knowledge that you're extracting from them to produce these engagements or arrangements of interface that they will be reacting with. Of course, it is extremely low budget before you see what it looks like on the shelf. If you're familiar with tools like Balsamiq, there's mock-ups or other places. Obviously, if you just Google wireframing tools or low-budget wireframing, it's very simple. You're going to get something that looks essentially like this. This is all you want, nothing more. This is very timeless. It's very easy. You can go higher budget if you have larger products, or the experience is more grand than something very simple. But this is essentially what it looks like. It takes, for someone who's skilled in these tools, just a few moments to put this together. It's very easy. This is an evolutionary process. You want to be cyclical with this information I've just provided, constantly talking to people, constantly engaging with the customers, improving upon the product that you've built, and don't assume that it's the end game. You might have come to a decision to launch something or to show something to the world, but be thinking next. How is this going to improve? How is it going to help people with their daily lives? How do I get my user to succeed or my customer to succeed? And then in essence, it's only in time that you will succeed as well. Create a great product. Whether you're sales focused or engineering focused or product driven, if you just have a great product, you probably don't have to worry about produce that to the world. This is the methodology for engagement. Collaboration. You must collaborate. Speak to each other. Keep your mouths open. Communicate openly. Over-communicate. Tell people how you're feeling. Create a relationship with the people that you're working with. These are very basic social tactics, of course, but extremely important if you want your voice to be heard. Perhaps you know that they do not. They as in your coworkers. Don't keep that to yourself. Express that. There will be times in which you will conflict, but those are the moments that help strengthen these relationships internally, and then it helps the product evolve. This is the love story between designer and engineer. And I thought it would be appropriate to highlight a place that I have found the essence of collaboration that I'm trying to kind of describe, of course. A company called Chandrex has put together this team. They're a media-focused organization. You can see all the people involved on this clip that I'm about to show you. There's fine writing, poetry, creative producers, modelers, CGI handlers, animators. They're essentially designers and engineers. I think they did a wonderful job, so I'll just take a moment to go ahead and show you this. It's very creative, but again, keep in mind that it's very engineer-driven.
Dreams. What are dreams? Moments etched in time, swept in strokes on twilight canvases, vast as the cosmos, quiet lullabies echoing through the purple dawn. Dreams. The farthest reaches of imagination fulfilled, endlessly evolving in leaps and bounds. Hidden beauty in unexpected places. Sculptures of perfect imperfections. These are dreams. Sublime journeys beyond the extraordinary. Sad shadows of requiems long ago. Forms and formlessness. Textures that radiate cascading visions and colorful sounds. Dreams that shimmer between wishes and stars. Mystery, majesty. Transcendent they soar through infinite possibilities.
So I don't actually think that was a car commercial, but I could be wrong, of course. I think the intent is to describe the relationship between the designer and the engineer. If you can collaborate with each other, if you can be communicative with your team, you can acquire some pretty attractive quality experiences regardless of the scope that they touch. I kind of ended a little quicker than I had anticipated. I'd love to get some feedback. If you have questions, if there's ways you'd like to engage in me, perhaps it's the scope of why you came. I can help understand that. These are the credits in which I've acquired this photography, the imagery that I've used. Do we have any questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Oh, please.
It's like during your career, what was your biggest struggle to cooperating with engineers? What was your biggest issue that you have to face, and how did you manage to cope with it? And what will help you from engineering perspective to collaborate better?
That's a good question. When I first started this, one of the things that was asked was that I do not actually collaborate with the engineer. Do not collaborate with the engineer because they don't know how to make product level decisions. Well, that's a little difficult when you put me into a room full of 15 or 20 of them that I'm required to be working with quite regularly. So how do you engage with that? I think I superseded that. I learned very quickly that not involving them was distracting. They felt like they had no scope, couldn't see the end game. They didn't know what it is they were building. Sliding a document across their desk and saying, go build this, is not the best way to engage in a relationship or an experience. You want them to be part of these solutions that you're building, that you're making. It's a collaborative thing, as I keep saying, and if they at least understand, and you understand as well, where the line is between what the visual aesthetic or the user experience is and what their roles are as an engineer. They're solving many different problems that I haven't really highlighted here, of course. I'm solving creative ones. They can help solve that too, but how they build it on their end is more important for them, and I can't really begin to dive into that. So it was like an understanding of where the line was, and yeah, and of course questions from their side. I don't know. I'd love to hear from the audience what the struggles for working with designers would be. Perhaps if you've had them, do you even work with designers? You need a designer if you don't, but you are in essence a designer. We've just learned. Is that a problem? Does your product have this quality that I'm describing? Well, you've been a wonderful audience. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.